Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome. Wednesday, November the 29th, 2023. Hope you are all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. And folks, we have got a jam-packed show for you all. Content bleeding out the eyeballs. Tis the season. Tis the season of transfer portal. Tis the season of per sources. Tis the season of eyeball emojis flooding social media. Also, by the way, the Gamecocks are 6-0. Quarter zip season has officially taken over in Columbia, guys. We are going to talk some South Carolina basketball. They got a big win last night. Also, things are lining up for a massive rivalry showdown on the hardwood next week. We'll talk about all that and more later in the show, guys. Also, again, continue the transfer portal discussion. What are South Carolina's top priorities there? At least what I think they should be. And we got a pair of special guests today. Not one, guys, but two. Our good friend Chris Marler of Saturday Down South, Saturday Football Uncensored. He'll join the show in a couple minutes to talk all things SEC ball, the SEC championship, of course, upcoming this weekend. And in the spirit of that, I thought, you know what? Chris Marler obviously has Bama ties, right? He's somewhat of a Bama guy, if you will. So I thought, let's bring on the Georgia perspective as well. Our good friend Blayne Gilmer of Southeastern 14. He joined me for a conversation about 30 minutes or so. So we'll go back to back on those conversations, talking all things SEC title game. And of course, guys, end of show, we will take your questions, your comments, and your voicemails in our daily mailbag segment. I see Dee Short, Justin, Brendan, C. Youngblood, Alex, Bender Rosa, Gavin, Cameron Blassingame, Austin Ward, John Edward, Austin Gregory. What's going on? Bowl Cut Deleter. The mods in the building. Lucas Green. Sir Big Spurs. What's going on, y'all? Thank y'all so much for tuning in. I thought I had something else. What else? Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you. Be sure you subscribe to the show, the Spurs Up Show, YouTube. You're on YouTube right now. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell icon so you get notifications when we go live, when we drop new video content as well. Also, guys, be sure to check us out via podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. You can find us there at the Spurs Up Show. And of course, be sure you're following us on social media across the board, X, Instagram, Facebook. We're even on TikTok. You name it, we are there. Again, content bleeding out the eyeballs there. And again, guys, really excited to chat today. The KJ Jefferson rumors emerging this morning. A lot of folks, obviously, with a lot of opinions regarding KJ Jefferson. And would he be a good fit at South Carolina? Should the Gamecocks pursue him? Our good friend Brad Crawford of 24/7 Sports this morning mentioning that South Carolina is the front runner for KJ Jefferson should he enter the transfer portal. Of course, then On3 goes out and says that he's expected to enter the transfer portal. Then KJ Jefferson on his Instagram story says, wait a minute, I haven't decided yet. Stop saying all this. So tis the season, guys. Like I mentioned, tis the season of per sources. Tis the season for eyeball emojis. That's what the transfer portal gives us. Also, there's more portal movement in the SEC with Florida quarterback, I believe. What's his name again? Max Brown, who's entering the portal. Guys, we got Bobby Petrino back in the SEC. All hell has broken loose. I mean, there's SEC storylines on SEC storylines. Also, last night, the SEC ACC Challenge. A lot of great basketball being played in the conference. A lot of teams won. Some teams went down, but a great night of college basketball nonetheless. But, guys, it's like I told you all before we get into this Chris Marler convo. It's like I told you all, the difficult thing, and I feel bad for basketball. I do. I feel bad for basketball from the standpoint of it is so difficult to get into college basketball when we are still in the heat of football, right? I said it last night. I said it this morning. Hey, you know what? We're going to kick off the show with men's basketball. Gamecocks are 6-0. The quarter zip is taken over. We are going to talk about men's basketball. First things first, after our guests, of course. That's going to be our lead topic. And then this morning, the KJ Jefferson stuff happens. And I'm like, see, this is why. Because every time you want to talk about college basketball, football does something that steals the thunder. That being said, though, we are going to kick things off with men's basketball after our guests, after we conclude with Chris Marler, Blayne Gilmer. We are going to talk about the fighting quarter zips in Columbia because, damn it, they are 6-0. They deserve some recognition. So, again, we'll get to that later in the show. But for now, guys, he joins us every single Wednesday. The king of great camera angles is with us once again, our good friend Chris Marler, Saturday Down South, Saturday Football Uncensored. Chris, what's going on, my man? Appreciate you taking the time.
Am I safe? Am I safe to be in here? Are there Clemson
good.
fans? Are there Clemson fans in here?
Well, that was going to be my first question, Chris, is who was in your mentions more over the last couple of days, Auburn fans or Clemson fans?
Clemson. Auburn fans ran and hid for sure.
Fair enough.
But, like, yeah, it was – I was sitting there, and I think I texted you about it, and I was like, what are Clemson fans – because, like, listen, I'll just be very honest. You know I like South Carolina. You know I'm going to pull for Carolina. I hate Dabo. My sister went to Carolina. I live in Lexington. Like, my family's lived here for 20 years. I'm, of course, pulling for Carolina in that game. I got caught up in the moment. I said some things I probably shouldn't have, and I deserved the backlash. But I texted you, and I was like, why are all these fans strictly talking about, like, emasculating me? And then I was like, oh, I'm the idiot that said they weren't man enough. And they were. It was I totally forgot. I was listening back to the other podcast we had that night. I think it was like Wednesday before Thanksgiving too. And like I had some drinks before we recorded our podcast. And I'm sitting there and I go, my buddy was like, did you say something about Clemson today that you shouldn't have? And I was like, yeah, I really got ahead of my skis on that one. But all in all, I mean, tough loss obviously for South Carolina, but on to the next season now and focus on that.
I mean, Chris, listen, I respect you calling your shot. That's what we do, right? We call our shots. We make picks. And if South Carolina would have won the game, no matter the fashion, you would have looked like a genius, and we would have been bringing that clip up. But that's the risk you take. So it is what it is. Sticking with that game, Chris, I don't know if you watched it start to finish, but a very just underwhelming football game. Objectively speaking, it's one of the most boring, probably, Palmetto Bowls I've ever seen. And a really difficult season comes to an end for South Carolina. I felt like in fitting fashion, the things that haunted this team from game 1 continued throughout the season, haunted them in game 12. Your thoughts on the game itself, and then where does South Carolina go from here? I mean, obviously a program that 5-7 in year 3 of Shane Beamer is not even remotely what Gamecock Nation was expecting this year. And I think you as well. I think you had them picked not to go like 9-3, but I mean, at least respectable, and it came crashing down, it seemed like, in this season.
I mean, I think I had them 7-5. I thought that was kind of the ceiling. I think that there's just some glaring holes on this team, and I think that it's like they're highlighted a little bit more when you lose guys with elite talent, when you don't have that much depth with elite talent. I said this the moment that Spencer Rattler decided he was transferring to South Carolina from Oklahoma. The first thing I did was I went to 247 Sports and I looked up the recruiting rankings specifically on the offensive line. And I'll never forget looking at it. And I'm like, okay, so when he was at OU, they had 11 total 4 stars or better offensive line players. And when he was going to South Carolina, his first year there, so 2 years ago, they had 1 4-star guy on the roster. That's it. And I think now they have maybe 2 or 3, and maybe they're bringing some in. I don't know. But like, that's just not going to get it done in this day and age of SEC football, in any age of SEC football. And you can say whatever you want to about how the stars don't matter, and you got to, like, you can still develop people. But this is not a program that's ever really developed a bunch of offensive linemen from what I can recall. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but like and Beamer, that's not Beamer's thing. Beamer's not some like elite O-line developer. He's not Sam Pittman. So you have got to get better up front. You lose Jordan Birch, obviously, to Oregon, which is, say whatever you want to about how that is, but you lost 2 5-stars off that defensive line, 2 former 5-star recruits off that defensive line a year ago. You've got to get better up front. I thought they made strides at times. I thought they did some things well. I think he's going to continue to be able to recruit offensive players at skill positions that are good, but it's going to be hard to run a balanced offense like they're trying to run without a running back, because who's going to want to go run behind that offensive line? I mean, like the rumors about KJ Jefferson, it's kind of comical to me, because it's like, all right, well, if there's anything I know about KJ Jefferson, he's the hardest quarterback to bring down in the country. So if you can't get an offensive line to block for him, maybe you go find a quarterback that just refuses to be tackled. Maybe that's the next step before you go ahead and get some offensive line guys.
What's your thoughts on those rumors? I mean, Gamecock fans are, you know how it goes with young quarterbacks, right? They come in late in some, mop up duty and they shine, and all of a sudden they're kind of anointed as the next guy. But I mean, I say promote competition. It worked really well for Ole Miss, adding some competition. It brought out the best in Jackson Dart. If it wouldn't have, right, Spencer Sanders or Walker Howard would have won the job, and they'd have been better off for it. So, I mean, your overall thoughts, I think some fans have mixed feelings. I'm all for it, again, in the spirit of competition.
1,000%. Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing. I mean, look at Bama. Like, there's just nothing. Elite competition, like iron sharpens iron, whatever cliche you want to throw out there, it really is true. And I think in this day and age of football too, is you cannot live in a world of fear where you're like, all right, well, hopefully we don't over recruit a position and somebody decides to leave, because that's just going to happen. Like it's just going to happen in this day and age. I think that getting KJ Jefferson would be, I don't want to say a surprise, because you've already shown at the very beginning of this whole thing that you've been able to go out and get elite quarterbacks from Power 5 schools that have been starters. I think it's in KJ's best interest to stay another year regardless. I was talking about this last night with Chris Gordy on his show, SEC or Locked On SEC, and I brought the point. I was like, this is a really, really interesting thing. I thought he would stay at Arkansas strictly because you have like Petrino coming in, who's been like a QB guru for a long time. But it also, I understand him going to South Carolina if he wants to stay in the conference, a conference that he's done really, really well in. Like, let's not forget that as bad as that team was this past season, he was a quarterback that was in the top 10 in QBR in the country for 2 straight seasons in 21 and 22. So I think he's extremely talented. I think it's definitely in his best interest to stay another year, because I don't see him getting into like a first round or even a second round pick. Like he's probably going to be like a day 3 guy, if anything. I think it would be a tremendous pickup for South Carolina. And I don't know if I think sometimes at some universities, in some programs, it's not the worst thing to stop trying to think such big picture. Like sometimes you need to go win now. And KJ Jefferson's a guy that can, I think, go win you football games now.
And Chris, you think about too the Dowell Loggins connection. Obviously, he was at Arkansas, now the OC for South Carolina. Justin Stepp was the wide receivers coach when KJ was there, so certainly. And then Trey Knox, who's just spent the year in Columbia. I'm sure they were in communication back and forth, and who knows what that may have resulted in. You mentioned Shane Beamer and not thinking so big picture, and it is win now, right? This day and age. And when you're a coach going into year 4, like there isn't a 10-year plan. Heck, it's not even a 5-year plan at most places. It's win and win now. So, Chris, I'll ask you this. Year 3, fairly or not, is deemed as a really, really important year for head coaches. Shane Beamer goes 5-7. What type of pressure do you think that puts on Beamer next year? It's, by the way, eerily – like it's eerie how similar the trajectories of Sam Pittman and Shane Beamer, how they've kind of like followed each other, right? Both had really, really early success, then teetered out, and then obviously Pittman went through this disastrous year, and it's all understood, I think, by everybody that next year is win or get out. I'm not saying Beamer's in that position because he's 1 year behind Pittman, but I think it's fair to say Beamer's seat is warm going into 2024.
Oh, yeah.
Your thoughts on that?
I don't know if that's fair that it should be, but I think it's fair to say. I think it's fair to say because again, this is a win now, like business. I think that you're in, and you don't get the luxury of winning. The best example of any of this, and I'm sure you guys have talked about it before, is his dad. I mean, Frank Beamer would have never lasted at Virginia Tech in this day and age of football ever, and you all know what kind of coach he ended up being. But here's the other thing too. One of the biggest things that's changed about college football that you just didn't see. Like, I mean, I'm an old, so like when I was growing up, like I'm in my the mid 30s, like you just had an offensive coordinator, and then you just kept that offensive coordinator. Like that was it. You just had one. It was like a family dog. It was like, well, like he's getting a little bit older. Maybe we'll replace him with whoever the offensive line coach is next year. We got to run that football. Like that's just what you did. And so now, like, you have all these people like the coordinator hires are so huge. And I think that's one thing that gets lost a lot in like success. And we talk about how the coach is not any good, or like a player, like a high school recruit's a bust. And you start thinking about like some of these guys, like, they're playing for like their fourth coordinator, not in Carolina, but I'm saying in general, playing their fourth coordinator in however many years. Like, it's insane because everyone's moving constantly across the landscape of college football, trying to, like, find step ladder jobs or like a stepping stone to another place. I think you really, really need to make sure that you have the right guys in a coordinator if you're Shane Beamer. And I think that, like, I don't know who the offensive line coach is. I don't. He needs to be gone. It's been embarrassing for 2 straight years. It's been he gave up 9 sacks against North Carolina. The fact that he was even allowed back on the team bus is kind of shocking to me. So, like, because you really, if you think about it, like, I made this comment about how LSU fans felt like they had wasted Jaden Daniels Sr.'s their season. I mean, where would this team be without Spencer Rattler? And where is Beamer? Where is Beamer without that 1-point victory over Clemson last year? You know what I mean? Like, and he won those games, so you have to give him credit. But, like, man, at some point you better start pulling in within at least two scores of Georgia. And now you got to go play. I think, who do they get? Oklahoma next year?
At Oklahoma, at Alabama next year.
Have fun. Have fun with that. I mean, it just doesn't get any easier. So that's the thing that's always worried me. And the thing that's always going to be an uphill battle for South Carolina, and he has done a really good job of getting through this. But the thing that's always been an uphill battle is if you talk to any coach, any college coach when they first get hired, the first thing they say is, we got to recruit this state. We got to put a fence around the state. And you want people that believe in the program, that have grown up watching that kind of game or that kind of football and believe in like I love this university. I grew up watching this university and blah, blah, blah. There's been several years in a row, like, where you look at, like, the talent in South Carolina, and it's like you have less than 10 4-stars seemingly almost every year. Sometimes you have less than 5 in the whole state. And not to be, like, super negative or look back on, like, why that 2011, 2013 run was so special, but, like, Stephon Gilmore and Marcus Lattimore and Jadeveon Clowney are all in-state guys and aren't growing on trees now. Right,
Alshon Jeffrey also.
Alshon Jeffrey, yeah. So, like, I think that he's really. I think you got to get, like, another guy like Nick Harbert. You got to get him the damn football, and then go from there. I think that there are some pieces in place that they could have, like, tremendous success. And I still love the culture that he's built. I think he's done a really good job of keeping that locker room together. And like, when they could have rolled over and died, and they didn't do that. Like, they just got outmanned a couple times this year. So, but that being said, 5-7 is not going to fly next year. I don't know if 7-5 is going to fly next year.
Chris, 4th and 31. Take me through your emotions on that final drive, the bad snap, the actual play. I mean, I'm sitting there. It's funny, Chris. I'm sitting there watching the game, obviously, and I'm posting through it, and I forget which play it was, but I reposted a video and I said, this has got Auburn heartbreak written all over it. The next play was the bad snap. And I said, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have spoke on you, Auburn. I apologize. Then the play happens, and I'm like, well, there we go. So take me through, though, the roller coaster of emotions for you. I just can't imagine that play where, I mean, it feels like there's 99-1, odds you're going to lose that football game. The play is made. What was going through your mind at that moment?
Man, I tell you what, I am so happy still. Like, that is, like, I just can't, like, listen, I'm 37 years old. I have watched Alabama. That is the first time in my life that Alabama has won 4 games in a row against Auburn. I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that until afterwards. Like, that's insane. Like, that's the first time in my life they've beaten that team for 4 straight times. I was shocked. And so someone is texting me about Suits right now on Netflix. No, I'm sitting there watching that game, and you kind of had this feeling. I remember I woke up on Saturday and I was like, oh, sorry, back to what I was saying about, like, being old or whatever. All of the moments in this rivalry that I have watched, all of the moments you see run back on CBS with a kick 6, cam back, almost every single one of them is Auburn winning. Bow over the top, punt, Bama punt. Like, you don't remember this. Remember, you know who Bruce Arians is, right? Like, widely considered one of the greatest, like, offensive minds in college football. In 1997, he was Alabama's offensive coordinator, and Bama was going in to beat Auburn, who was ranked, and Bama was like 4-6 at the time. Going in to beat them, all they do is run the clock out, and they ran a fullback screen on their own 30-yard line. And Ed Sissom fumbled it. Auburn got the ball back and kicked a game-winning field goal to win 18-17. I've experienced heartbreak, especially in Jordan Hare, over and over and over again. And when Bama wins, it's like they win by like 20 or 30 points. So it's like, okay, that game, it felt like I just started going through all the typical fan emotions where I'm like going through the stages of grief where I'm like, I'm mad at the officials because they were making some horrific calls for one. And I'm like trying to scoff at it because I'm like, then I start doing this whole thing where I'm like telling myself, I'm like, well, we weren't going to beat Georgia. They weren't going to win a national championship. They were never that good. Like where they were going to do that. It's like, this is still a great season. I'm doing all those things to tell myself it's okay. Like, it's fine. Like, whatever. Like, you're still going to be 10-2 and you've done a great job with this. Like, I'm just telling myself all these things. And then they get down to they get the first down inside the 5. And I'm like, are we going to win this game? Like, are we going to find a way? Because listen, it's cool to beat your rival. It's fucking awesome to rip their fucking heart out, especially in their place. And there are a few things I love more than watching Georgia or Auburn, Tennessee get their heart ripped out. And I sat there and that snap went 20 yards back and I was like, unfucking real. Like, how does that happen? And when he threw it, I was like, that's got to go out of bounds. And I kept watching the ball and I was like, why is he standing there in single coverage? Like, what? Why is the defensive back not turned around? And then he caught it, and I just the most guttural, noise came out of my mouth. It was like it was one of the coolest games I've ever watched. I'm still not over it. I've watched every replay imaginable. I've watched all the Bama fans celebrate, Auburn fans react to it. Those are just the moments that really make college football great. I don't think Bama wins this weekend against Georgia. Spoiler alert. But that is definitely a core memory that I will have for the rest of my life as an Alabama fan. It was awesome.
Like you said, Chris, beating your rivals one thing, ripping their heart out at their place is a complete another. I mean, I can't imagine many more heartbreaking ways to lose a football game than what Auburn suffered in that game, which, again, I'm sure you're shedding a tear over it. Anyways, you mentioned SEC championship. Let's move to that. Obviously, the big one this weekend in Atlanta. I did not know about Bama's history, just in the city of Atlanta. Like, they haven't lost there in
good, huh?
100 years or something like that. Never. I love the stat, though. Bama has never lost at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And I'm like, the stadium has existed for 10 minutes. But either way,
first off, no. Don't discount that at all because they won the Natty there in 2017.
They played some big games there. I get it. I get that. Yeah. They've got a good track record. I mean.
We can move it back because
the city of Atlanta one is cooler though. That to me is wild. Like, they just don't lose in Atlanta. Georgia favored in this game. The Dogs survive in advance of a rivalry weekend. Who cares? Half the team, it seems like, sat out and didn't play. Bama coming off the emotional win over Auburn. You mentioned you've got the Dogs winning. I mean, I feel like most are probably going to lean that way just because it's been so long since we've seen Georgia lose. It's like, are you going to be the person that goes out on a limb and picks against them? But I mean, I'm very excited, Chris, to watch the matchup, the way Georgia's defense tries to corral Jalen Milroe in the running ability. I'm excited to watch the Bama defense go up against Carson Beck. I feel like, admittedly, this could be kind of like his coming out party from the standpoint of, I don't know that Beck is really a guy that's talked about all that much because Georgia's so ho-hum. They were expecting to do this. He's put up insane numbers this year. Your overall thoughts just on the game, the matchups you're most excited to watch for. What do you think the X factor is in this one?
I want to pull this up to you first and foremost. You said he's put up insane numbers. I'm going to give you some numbers and you tell me who's who. Okay, you ready? 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 9.4 yards per attempt. 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 10.6 yards per attempt. Who's who?
Well, I'm pretty sure the 22 touchdowns is actually Milroe because I think I looked up these stats last night. Am I incorrect? I know their stats are very comparable in the passing game, which shocked me.
Yeah. And Milroe's got, I think on the season he's at 33 touchdowns and 6 picks. Here's the deal. I think that this is going to be a really, I'm just trying to channel every amount of 2021 vibes I can muster because you did the same thing going into that game. You were 11-1. You skated by a couple teams. A lot of people thought you weren't good enough to get there. And you're going up against a team that many think is not only the best in the country, but maybe one of the best in all time history. 2021, that was the best defense in the history of college football, hands down. You put up more points in one quarter in the second quarter than they'd given up in a single game all year. You don't have Bryce Young on this team, but in a lot of ways, you've got some guys that are going to frustrate a defense, especially a Kirby Smart defense. Here's one thing I will say, and you guys might think I'm crazy for saying this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. All the talk about how Bama always struggles with a mobile quarterback. Remember how we would always hear that?
Mm-hmm.
You notice that's kind of stopped.
It's like that's the way to beat them, right? You have to have a mobile quarterback, right?
And then you start thinking about the quarterbacks they're talking about in that: Tebow, Cam Newton, Johnny Manziel, Nick Marshall, like those types of guys.
Garcia was mobile in his own way.
Sure. I'm glad you brought that one up too. I really am, because then like Joe Burrow is a mobile quarterback, but he wasn't that. His legs aren't what beat Bama in 2019, right? And then there really aren't any other big moments from like 2017, 2018, like because the losses get like shorter and shorter. It wasn't like whoever the quarterback was at A&M in 2021 that beat him was because it was mobile. All those teams that you're talking about with that stigma are Kirby Smart defenses at Alabama. Deshaun Watson, like all those guys. That's all Kirby Smart. So I think there is definitely a situation where you consider and say that Jalen Milroe can put them in fits, and he is going to account for 7 to 14 points somehow, whether it's unexpected, like whether it's like a pick late, like deep in his own territory, whether it's like, he gets a scramble and gets loose for 40, 50 yards. Because he is, I've said it since the beginning of the season, the danger about benching that kid is he's the best player on the field the moment he steps on the field for either side. He's the best athlete, not best player, best athlete on the field the moment he steps on the field. And I think that like he's been playing with a ton of confidence. The offensive line's played a lot better. The thing that concerns me, because I do think Bama's going to be able to score. The thing that concerns me is I think Georgia is good enough to overcome at least one turnover. I think they'll be fine if they can overcome that. I think that they can kind of pick which way they want to try to attack Bama's defense. Like if Kendall Milton's playing the best football he's played since he stepped foot on campus in Athens. He looks fantastic at running back right now. Carson Beck has been tremendous. Just boringly lethal. Just like unbelievably, underwhelmingly lethal is like the best way to put it. Like he just goes out there and throws for 300 yards a game, and like the touchdown numbers don't like make it seem super gaudy, but he's got like 3,500 passing yards or some crazy shit like that. So then you have like the receivers. It's like it seems like for the last half of the season, it's like pick your poison. Which guy? Pick a name out of a hat. Which guy do you want to have a career game today? Do you want Dylan Bell to go off? Do you want Robert Thomas to go off? Like who? McConkey's going to be healthy. I think that if you're Bama, you're going to have a hard time stopping them. Like even if you can somehow stop Powers for that long. And I think that Georgia's good enough to overcome at least one turnover. And the thing that scares me is I think that Bama will keep this game close for 3 quarters. I do. And then I think it'll play out pretty similarly to the 2008 SEC Championship, which is where they played Florida and they had a lead going into the 4th. And then Florida did what Florida does, which is we have more athletes than you. We're a better team than you. We're going to out-execute you. And they win by double digits. And I think that this is still, despite the Natty 2 years ago, a monkey that's on Kirby's back. And I just think that Kirby, when he has a chip on his shoulder, is extra dangerous. I think Georgia wins by 10+ points, man.
Double-digit victory for the Dogs. Yeah. So let me ask you this, Marler. If Bama is in your mind, I guess I could fairly say pull the upset. If they're going to do that, what must happen for Alabama?
I think you got to force. I think you got to have a game like where Stetson Bennett had in 2021, where you force them into multiple turnovers, and then like here's the thing I know about Georgia. I know this about Georgia. I said this in 2021. You have got to put them into a unfamiliar situation that at the same time is all too familiar. And that is this. All of the good thing for Georgia is that team fears no one. That team fears no one. But every single one of those Georgia fans, you mark my fucking words on this. Every single Georgia fan that walks into that stadium, no matter how drunk and obnoxious and arrogant they are walking in there, they're going to walk in and see all these other Georgia fans, and they're going to say in that stadium, oh, shit, that's where Devontae Smith caught second and 26 and ripped my heart out. That's where Jalen Hurts came off the bench and scored with a minute and a half to go, and we faked a punt on 4th and 11 for some reason and ripped my heart out in 2018. That's where we had the best defense in the history of college football, and Bryce Young put an SEC championship game record 460 yards of offense on us. Like, that's a house of fucking horrors for those people, and I can't wait for that. So if you make it close going in late in the game, Georgia fans are going to be I would be shocked if they are as confident, arrogant, and loud as the rest of that game. Do not let Bama hang around and start believing, because that's where they're going to be dangerous. And I think that if they can get them in that situation, it's going to be, I mean, because Georgia hasn't been there. Georgia hasn't been struggling late against anyone, like all season, like maybe Mizzou. But I mean, this isn't Sanford. It's just not. And at some point, if it's close, they're going to look up on the other sideline and be like, fuck, here we go again. You got the greatest coach in college football history on the other side, and you've got a kid that potentially could be playing out of his mind with Jalen Milroe. You look at the A&M game, man. I just tell you what, I want it to be a good game. I would like Bama not to get boat raced. I'm very nervous they will, but we'll see.
Chris Marler of Saturday Down South, Saturday Football Uncensored. Chris, one last thing, and I'll get you out of here, and somehow I just glossed over it. The hirings of Mike Elko at A&M, Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State. Your brief thoughts on what those two guys mean for those programs.
I just don't have a thought on Lebby. I don't really care. I mean,
it is Mississippi State, to be fair. Hopefully no Bulldog fans are tuned in.
They're excited, which is good for them. Like, it's their 5th head coach in 8 years, which is kind of crazy. But I think I'm excited for them since they're excited, and I mean that, not like just being a dickhead. The Elko thing, it's funny. It's funny because Jimbo Stoops and Elko all look like, I think I said, like a Russian stacking doll of each other. Like they are the same person. Like it's like, but I will say, I think that's the guy they needed to get. I think he gets it. I think he will be able to. He's obviously a good coach. Like being able to put like Duke at back-to-back bowl eligible seasons, including 9 wins in year one. Look what he did this year without his starting quarterback. That's probably a 9-win team with Riley Leonard at quarterback. It'd be interesting to see how he recruits for sure, but I think it was the right hire.
Chris, always a pleasure, my friend. Looking forward to the game on Saturday, and we'll break it all down next week.
Sounds good, brother. Talk to you then.
Man, appreciate you. We'll talk to him. Great stuff. Our friend Chris Marler of Saturday Down South, Saturday Football Uncensored. He got Georgia winning by double digits in the SEC championship. How about that? Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, our good friend Blayne Gilmer gives the Georgia perspective on the SEC title on Saturday. All that and more, guys, on the side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home. Call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
That's your Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Wednesday, November the 29th, 2023. Guys, we're going to go ahead and jump into this conversation. Our good friend Blayne Gilmer of Southeastern 14 joined us. I will let you guys know ahead of time, the video, unfortunately, the audio is great. The video's a little bit, or I should say a lot of bit choppy. So if you notice that, I do apologize. I went back and forth. Should we air the video? Should we not? But I wanted our live show audience to hear this conversation. So the audio, bit grainy, bit choppy, but the audio is good. The video bad, audio good. You guys will see what I'm talking about. Guys, appreciate you all. Thank you all so much. Again, lots to get into, talking Gamecocks men's basketball, the transfer portal, these latest KJ Jefferson rumors, and your questions, comments, and voicemails in our daily mailbag segment. But for now, we kick it over to this conversation with our good friend, Blayne Gilmer of Southeastern 14. Championship weekend is officially upon us, and it takes us to Atlanta, Georgia, where two familiar faces, the Georgia Bulldogs and Alabama, will battle for it all in the last season of this 14-team SEC. Texas and Oklahoma joining the league next year. Things will look different with no more division. So I guess you could say the last SEC title as we know it, and help us break it all down from the, I say, Georgia perspective, but also the game as a whole. Our good friend Blayne Gilmer over from Southeastern 14. He joins the show. Blayne, appreciate you taking the time, my friend. How are you?
Absolutely. I'm always interested to see the Spurs Up Show clips every day on social media. So I keep that rolling all the time, but I'm excited to be talking the SEC championship. Like you said, the end of an era, but it is kind of apropos with these two Titans that have kind of ruled the SEC universe over the last few seasons. Get to meet once again here, Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, and their talented team. So it's going to be a lot to break down. We've been doing it all week at Southeastern 14. Already got to jump on it. I know you're going to be doing some stuff, and I'm excited to talk about it with you here today.
Yeah, Blayne, specifically, let's start with the Georgia perspective. You know, Georgia was a team, obviously, came into this season. They were the favorite, picked to win it all yet again by many. Certainly the SEC East and the SEC championship by most. And you looked at this schedule, and most folks looked at it and said, hey, it's a favorable schedule, works out well for Georgia. When will the Dogs even be tested? I thought it was interesting, Blayne. You were one of the few I thought out there that were willing to be critical and have an honest take on Georgia early in the season, even when it was against quote-unquote lesser competition, that Georgia was not playing at a championship level, if you will, falling behind early in games, having to claw their way back, right? We saw that against South Carolina, I think, in just the second or third week of the season. But as the season progressed, Georgia started clicking, right? We got in the month of November, which is when we thought the Dogs were going to get tested. And, I mean, they blast Kentucky. They blast Ole Miss. They blast Tennessee, just like game after game after game. The Georgia we were used to seeing. You have that game against Georgia Tech, which it was rivalry weekend. I don't really take a whole lot from that. I think the Dogs sat a lot of people. Where is Georgia now as a football team versus beginning a season when they had so many question marks? And again, you were critical of their play and maybe they weren't playing at the level they were capable. How much different is Georgia right now going in this game versus beginning of this season?
Oh, I mean, night and day different. The simple fact that Carson Beck, I mean, he had not started a football game. He walked out against UT Martin, and he said after the game, "Hey, I was about to throw up out there. I was so nervous." That's what he said. I mean, he had not started since high school. So 3+ years of just sitting, not being able to play meaningful snaps really, and then going out and being the starter, even against an FCS opponent. He was nervous, and he played a little bit like that. And you had to break in some new guys, whether it was Ra Thomas or Dominic Lovett learning the offense. And there were some of those growing pains and things like that. And Ladd McConkey wasn't healthy. And And the running backs, there was basically no running backs healthy. They were playing Cash Jones out there, a walk-on from Texas was out there playing running back for Georgia. Amarius Mims goes down in the South Carolina game, and they have to reshuffle the offensive line and break in Dylan Fairchild a little bit, Micah Morris, guys who now are the two strongest guys in terms of strength on Georgia's team, those two guards, reserve guards, but they had not played a whole lot of meaningful snaps themselves, and they had to work themselves into the tweet you're referencing. I said, hey, the ghost of champions past are not going to come rescue Georgia here. You've got to the standard is the standard is what Kirby Smart says, and they were not playing up to that standard. But I think it showed a lot of growth and maturity out of Kirby Smart himself, because he's seen, okay, what this process looks like over the last 2 years. And he could have been ripping these guys and going crazy and all that, but he remained so calm and uplifted these guys in the media and things of that nature, and talked about him, how much confidence he had in Carson Beck, because he had seen it for 3 years going up against some of the generational defenses that we've seen here at Georgia. He went up against those ones. He went up against the Jordan Davis and the N'Kobe Dean and all of those guys, the Nolan Smiths over the years. He was taking those reps against them. So he had been in the fire, and it came to fruition middle of the season when they had to turn it on, and when they had their full attention on that Kentucky team that came in 5-0 to Athens. That's when the switch flipped, and Georgia turned it on, and they haven't really turned back. And Carson Beck has been absolutely unbelievable. I mean, we can go into numbers and all that kind of stuff, but it's just a totally different team, and they've grown a lot, and so is their opponent. I think you can say the same thing about Alabama from where they started at the beginning of the season. So Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, people don't want to hear it. They want to hear Eli Drinkwitz or somebody like that get the SEC Coach of the Year deal. But I think you can't argue that Saban and Smart maybe haven't done their best coaching jobs this season.
Yeah, Blayne, to your point, I was going to say that a lot of folks will argue Nick Saban. This has been his best coaching job, because we think back early in the year, we'll move to the Crimson Tide. You think back earlier in the year, what Alabama was. Admittedly, Blayne, I was one of those. I picked Alabama to go 9-3, right? Everybody wants to be the first to call the downfall of the dynasty, or Nick Saban being out the door. And, when you looked at the questions in the preseason, you looked on paper, and I liked LSU. I thought LSU was going to go back-to-back. It looked like on paper they had all the pieces returning. They had the team to go on the road to Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama, and they gave them a great fight. But, when you looked at Alabama early, I think a lot of us thought we were going to be right. Bama loses to Texas, that USF game. Heck, I left that USF game thinking this team might go 7-5. This team might go 8-4. Instead, Nick Saban is able to get this team off the mat, rally the troops, and the evolution of Jalen Milroe has been astounding. From what he was at that point, getting benched, making mistakes, to now just a big-time playmaker, right? He's limited those mistakes. He's being much more efficient. I think the offense is much more catered to him and tailored to his skill set. Obviously, the front seven for Bama speaks for itself in the defense. But what have you seen from Alabama, the growth and maturation of this team? And, to a point now where, I think this is an SEC championship game that's a coin flip ball game, whereas, Blayne, maybe a month or two ago, it didn't look like there was anybody that could go toe-to-toe with Georgia. What have you seen from Alabama this season, and that masterful coaching job from Saban that you mentioned?
Well, the secondary is unreal, and that was the case at the beginning of the year for Alabama. They gave up some big plays here or there, but Terrion Arnold has grown leaps and bounds from being the guy that Tennessee picked on last year in Knoxville to being a guy that you don't want to throw it towards, and you definitely don't want to throw it towards Kool-Aid McKinstry. They got Caleb Downs up back there, who is as good of a freshman college football player that I have seen in a long, long time. He's the best high school football player I have seen in person, and that includes I coached against Deshaun Watson. I coached against, I played against Blake Sims, who went to Alabama from this area. I played against Connor Shaw in high school. We were in the same region, and these are all elite, great high school football players. I've never seen a player as good or as ready to play in the SEC as Caleb Downs at safety for Alabama. So that was elite from the start. Their linebackers are great. So the defense was there, and they kind of leaned on that defense, and they knew, hey, we can lean on that early and bring Jalen Milroe along And I think Nick Saban almost was just proving a point to people in that USF game, saying, okay, you don't like what you saw out of Jalen. Well, watch what you see when we play these other guys against USF. And it was an absolute train wreck. Jalen handled it the right way. He won over the team, and he has matured, like you said, in terms of, and Tommy Rees has what you said as well, tailored this offense. It's not, okay, full field reads. We're going to cut the field in half. We're going to give you 1-2. If it's not there, take off and run. We're going to add some more quarterback design run elements. We're going to take the read out of the quarterback and running back exchange. We're going to make it look like we're reading, but we're either going to give it to the running back or we're going to let you pull it, Jalen, and go and just be an athlete and use your legs. But he's also grown so much inside the pocket as well. So, I think it's similar to Georgia's deal, a guy that had to get his legs underneath him at quarterback as a starter, but Alabama still has some struggles that Georgia didn't have. Georgia's starting a redshirt freshman at left tackle, but Alabama's starting a true freshman at left tackle. And when you haven't had that year under your belt and you're having to start freshmen, and South Carolina knows about, being, having to throw some guys into the fire at offensive line, it's rough. And Caden Proctor has really struggled, but even he has started to pick up things. Chris, they've had 39 sacks they've allowed this year, but they've only allowed 4 sacks in the month of November. So that tells you how much Alabama has improved along the front. Now, they haven't played the greatest of defenses in the month of November, but they have improved a ton there on that front, the offensive line there for Alabama. So, yeah, that's why it's a close game. Now, Vegas must know something. I don't know, because they keep bumping that line more in Georgia's favor, 6.5. You see it could be up by a touchdown at some point, but and we can talk for reasons like that, but Alabama has grown tremendously as well.
Yeah, you mentioned that spread, Blayne. Like I mentioned, I think it opened at 3. It's now up to Georgia, 6.5, something like that. Over under set around 49.5. Latest college football playoff rankings, Blayne, dropped. Obviously, Georgia at number 1. Alabama's outside of the top 6. How does that factor into, I guess, the psyche of this game? I mean, it's all on the line for Bama, right? For Georgia, for both sides, right? The winner of this game. What I think's interesting, I saw right before we jumped on, saw some Georgia folks talking. There's a better chance that Georgia could lose this game and still make the playoff than Bama win the game and get in the playoff. The playoff's going to be a mess, right? Thank goodness there's a committee that handles that and somebody, not us. But I mean, I just, a game like this, it's only fitting that there's so much on the line that obviously if you're going to have a chance to, if you're Georgia, win your 3rd consecutive, if you're Bama, get back there and have a shot at it. You got to win this game, man, because I don't know that this is the year the SEC gets 2 in.
No, you're not going to get 2 in. It's not going to be like that unless you have, Oregon blows out Washington. So Washington drops all the way out of contention. Ohio State, I don't think is going to get in. Then you've got, if Texas lost to Oklahoma State and Florida State lost to Louisville, then maybe you start to see that come into fruition if Alabama were to beat Georgia in a close game type deal. But yeah, the playoff thing, I don't think Georgia, and as much as it is coach speak and as much as it is these players have been trained, Chris, to mimic what Saban and Smart say, I really don't think they care very much. I do not think they care. And because when you are in that kind of, it is, people think that they have nerves and pressure and all that kind of stuff, being a fan or watching the team and all that kind of stuff. You cannot imagine the amount of desire that is inside of that building to not only compete at the highest level, but just dominate. I mean, they have you've heard Kirby Smart's speeches that have been leaked. I mean, it's another level, man. I mean, they're as they said, there's levels to this stuff. And I'm telling you, Kirby, that just drips through him all the way through that program. And guys are totally just one track mind focused on accomplishing the next task in the very best possible version of themselves that they can. And that is a uncommon mindset that you see in the world today. We're so distracted. And I'm not talking about just football. I'm talking about in life. We're so distracted with 10 million different things going on, but to have a singular focus that you are 100%, your energy is put into one common goal with that. I mean, that's what Saban and Smart have been able to do. And I think the college football playoff thing, they all know it's going to take care of themselves, because at the end of the day, one, The committee doesn't have the nuts to not put an SEC team in. I'm just telling you, they don't. And two, it would be a disaster for their ratings, and it would be a disaster for the bottom line of the college football playoff. They won't do it. They won't leave the SEC out. There's no way. So even if the doomsday scenario comes, either Alabama or Georgia is getting in this thing.
Now, Blayne, speaking specifically on the game on Saturday afternoon, the tall task for Georgia defensively is limiting Jalen Milroe, the running ability, keeping him inside the pocket. Is that your greatest concern for the Georgia defense? And if not, what is it when taking on this Alabama offense?
I think that's always a concern, and also the big playability that they have down the field with Isaiah Bond and Jermaine Burton is big. But I'm telling you what I've been saying all week, that I think the defining factor of this game is when you look at Tyke Smith and you look at Marvin Jones Jr. and Chaz Chambliss and Michael Williams, and then also how Georgia fits the perimeter run game with their safeties of Javon Bullard and Malachi Starks coming up. And I mentioned Tyke Smith at that star position. It's been the perimeter where Georgia, Chris, if you'll go turn on the tape and look, a lot of times they play with a tight, 4-eye, head up 4 or a 5 a lot of times with no force defender on the outside, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to spill everything from the middle, and they're trying to say, you are not going to run on us in between the tackles. It's not going to happen. You're going to have to extend everything to the perimeter, and then they've had the speed from inside linebacker, star, and safety to rally to that and make the tackles. They have been a step slower this year at those positions, and the contain has not been there on the perimeter run game. I'm not talking about just quarterback. I'm talking about stretch, zone, fly sweep, things like that. Kendrick Law, Jam Miller. Who knows if Jace McClellan's going to be able to play? He was on crutches in a walking boot after the game, against Auburn. So we'll see, with no update on him. He did not practice on Monday. So, but those running backs, I'm more concerned if I'm Georgia about, hey, I cannot let Alabama get a consistent running game, and especially a perimeter running game going, and get me going horizontally, because that's when I get going horizontally, I'm also going to create those vertical seams, and that is going to be the problem, because Jalen Milroe has been deadly on deep throws this year. Over 50% of his throws of his passing production has been on deep balls this year. The intermediate game, not so much. So got to control that perimeter run game. I think if you're Georgia with Tyke Smith, Chaz Chambliss, Michael Williams, Marvin Jones, those guys on the edge, I think that's going to be the big factor in this game. Georgia does that, and they're able to make Jalen Milroe one-dimensional, and then they can go after Caden Proctor and go after that left side of that Alabama offensive line. I think they could have a really good day defensively.
Now, Blayne, switching sides of the football, you mentioned that great secondary from Alabama, the front seven, the entire defense, right? They're stout. But I feel like this could be an afternoon where the country really learns about Carson Beck. And shame on folks for not paying closer attention, but correct me if I'm wrong, Blayne, it feels like Carson Beck has had quietly a phenomenal season. And I don't know if it's just because Georgia was expected to go undefeated. It's like ho-hum. Nobody really cares. Like, Georgia's season kind of begins now is how some people look at it, or what have you. But I mean, this dude is putting up insane numbers on a week in, week out basis, torching everyone. I feel like this could be a ball game where he goes off. Everybody's going to turn their head and be like, where'd this come from? And they're going to look at the stats and realize, hey, this has actually been happening all year. So your thoughts on Georgia offensively? It's interesting, Blayne. It's not that ground and pound Georgia rushing attack that I think we're also accustomed to seeing. The Dogs are winning through the air with that Mike Bobo passing attack. How do you expect Georgia to attack that Bama defense, and what type of success do you expect them to have? Obviously, I think this is a defense. Both defenses or both teams, neither side, neither offense has seen or taken on the opponent like they're taking on this weekend.
Yeah, obviously, I think these are the best defenses that either of these two teams have played, like you mentioned. But this is not going to be, in terms of Alabama, they've played Texas, but I don't think Texas is better, even though Texas is explosive with guys like Xavier Worthy and stuff like that. As a unit, as a whole, I don't think Texas is better offensively than Georgia. You go look at Georgia and look at Carson Beck and look at what they've done in terms of doing most of their action in 3 quarters. I mean, he's been shut down a lot in the 4th quarter, handing the ball off, doing that kind of stuff, and still has put up numbers where this guy should be in New York as a Heisman Trophy finalist. I mean, there's no doubt about it, but he's a victim of his team's own success, okay, because they have been blowing teams out, because they have been running the ball in the 4th quarter, because they have been, the defense has been so good that they haven't had to really go after it. But here's the thing about Carson Beck. He has done his best. He has been his best when his best has been required. This year, okay, when Georgia has been tied or has been trailing, he is 112 of 150 attempts, and that is good for 74.67. He's completing 75% of his passes, Chris, when they are tied or trailing, and 43% of those passes have gone for first downs. I mean, he has been stone cold under pressure, and speaking of pressure, you can't get to him, okay? Over 400 passing plays this year, if you take into account the times that he's pulled it down and ran it. He's only been sacked 10 times on the entire year. I mean, that is it. Alabama's had allowed 39 sacks on the year. Georgia's allowed 10. So it's going to be a great matchup between Ernest Green and Amarius Mims and Dallas Turner. And Chris Braswell and all those guys over there rushing the passer for Alabama. But the thing I think you need to watch out for is, listen, Brock Bowers and Lamb McConkey, they didn't play the last game. They're going to play this game. I'm just telling you, they're going to be in there. They're going to play. Brock Bowers versus Jalen Key, Brock Bowers versus Caleb Downs. As good as he is, Caleb Downs, is he ready as a true freshman to take on maybe the greatest tight end to ever play college football? And that's not a overstatement. You go look at his numbers. Do you realize you go look at Brock Bowers' numbers in 3 years and compare them to Marvin Harrison's numbers at Ohio State, and they're right there neck and neck in terms of production? I mean, this guy is unreal in terms of what he's done at the tight end position. You put him and Ladd on the field at the same time, and then now add Dylan Bell in, who's become a monster. Add Dominic Lovett in, who's become a monster. Marcus Rosemy-Jackson. This is a multifaceted and attack and the amount of weaponry that Alabama hasn't seen this year. And unless Carson Beck totally implodes, okay, and does things that he has not done all year, I think that they're going to have great success. And then also the other thing is Kendall Milton is running like he has been infused with the spirit of Herschel Walker or something here lately, because he is running over people. I mean, running through people's faces, and is finally healthy for the first time in his career. Daijun Edwards is a good, change of pace back that actually leads Georgia in rushing. But Kendall Milton has finally become what Georgia thought he would, and Georgia should win the Joe Moore Award this year with that offensive line that they have in front of him. But they'll probably give it to Michigan again because that's just what that award likes to do. But yeah, I think Georgia is definitely the best offense that Alabama has played. But then again, like you said, Alabama is the best defense that Georgia has played. So it's going to be strength on strength.
Blayne, you mentioned all the great players that'll be in this game. Obviously, these are two great teams going at it. In your opinion, what is the X factor on Saturday when the dust settles and whoever the victor is, what is it that they did that the loser of the game did not do that's going to separate them at the end of the day?
Well, in the month of November, Alabama is leading the SEC and probably leading the entire world in red zone touchdown percentage. They are over 85% touchdown percentage in the red zone in the month of November. Georgia defensively has been unbelievable, leading the SEC. Early on in the season, Georgia was like down at, they were down at 11th, 12th in red zone touchdown percentage. People were like, oh, no, Georgia's allowing touchdowns in the red zone. Well, guess what? It was only like 15 attempts, and people had scored, enough to get 60, 70% on them. People were like, Georgia's not good in the red zone on defense. What's going on? In the month of November, when you mentioned that stretch run against Missouri, a really good team, Chris, right? Good team. Ole Miss, good offense. Tennessee, really good. The best red zone percentage, or one of the better red zone percentage historically, over Heupel's tenure. They're good in the red zone. And then Georgia Tech, 4 teams that are good in the red zone. Georgia in the month of November has held teams to 38.4% in terms of red zone touchdown percentage. So which one breaks? Okay, we got a lot of things that are going to, streaks are going to be broken, trends are going to be broken. Georgia's won 29 in a row. Alabama's never lost in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Alabama's scoring at will in the red zone. Georgia's not allowing anybody to score in the red zone. So I think red zone efficiency is going to be the key to this game.
Blayne, you mentioned 29 in a row for Georgia. Alabama trying to keep the dynasty or trying to keep the Nick Saban era alive in regards to their postseason hopes and their standard and expectations. So kind of an interesting question for you. And what I think's so cool about this matchup, right? Like when Georgia goes throughout its regular season schedule, that G on the helmet, it intimidates, it strikes. That was my takeaway, by the way, Blayne, from the Ole Miss game. I was like, I think we're getting to a point, if we're not already there yet, where kind of like when you'd see that Alabama A, you'd see that jersey, you'd see those numbers on the helmet. That G is starting to strike fear in the opponent, where it's like, it's more than just beating this group of athletes and this coaching staff. You have to convince yourself as a football team, like, we're not playing the logo. That was the biggest thing with Bama for the longest time. It's like you psych yourself out before the game even takes place. What's great about this ball game, neither side's going to be intimidated. Both teams think they should win. Both teams deserve to be here. They know that. They believe that. But when you look at this game, where does more pressure fall? On the Georgia side or the Alabama side?
Man, Kirby Smart and company say pressure is a privilege. So I guess they're willing to take that pressure and take it on. And I would say probably with Georgia, just because of the history of it. And like, make no mistake about it. I don't know if you've seen interactions on Twitter and stuff like that, but other than the rogue, crazy people, there's a lot of mutual respect here between these Georgia and Alabama fans, because they know what each other have gone through. They know what each other have done and things like that, and how hard it is to do it at the consistent level that each program has done it. So I've seen that come to fruition. Alabama fans are saying, well, you go look at their message board, they're really nervous about Georgia. Georgia fans are really nervous about Alabama. I would say probably, but just because Georgia and the history in the SEC championship game specifically against Alabama, there's a lot of that can come into play. But one unique thing that I think's happened here in this budding, I guess, rivalry, you would call it now, Chris, is that in the past, during when Saban was in the midst of his championship runs, right, his back-to-back or 3 and 4 years or different things like that, it was always the Alabama team that had more experience in the big game environments than Georgia. Well, now Georgia's played in more college football playoff games in the last 2 years, more SEC championship games in the last 2 years. A lot of the people that Alabama is playing, whether it's young guys like Caleb Downs or people like that, they've never been in this environment. They've never been to it. Georgia, this is old hat for them. They've been here. So while the pressure is on them, I think they welcome that pressure, and I think they thrive on it, and I think they play their best when it comes down to that. I mean, look at Javon Bullard. That dude plays out of this world in big games. He's been a college football playoff game MVP, I think, every time Georgia's been in a game over there on the defensive side. So, we'll see how some of the new guys for Georgia do, but I think this is exactly right. I don't think anybody's intimidated, but I think that there is a little bit of pressure just from the outside looking in, maybe on Kirby and the Dogs to finally beat Alabama in Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Now, Blayne, I'll be locking in my pick later in the week. Admittedly, though, I'm leaning Georgia in this game just because it's hard to pick against the defending back-to-back national champions until they show a chink in the armor and lose. You mentioned Bama's success against Georgia in the city of Atlanta. I tend to lean, too. I think it's going to be a higher scoring game, that 49.5 in Vegas. I feel like the over is the way I'd go. Forgive me for missing your prediction, but which way are you going in this ballgame? And do you see it like I do, being a higher scoring game, or the offenses rule the day, or do you think it's a traditional or a typical, I should say, Georgia Alabama type of slugfest, if you will, where it's like a pair of heavyweight fighters trading blows on Saturday?
Well, you just go look at the history of SEC championship games, of college football playoff games now. When elite teams with elite playmakers get against each other, Chris, and these, the bag is emptied by these offensive coordinators, it's just hard to stop each other. It's just hard to get those stops. And I think you're going to see some big explosive plays hit by each team. I'm going with Georgia to win 34-30 because I think it's going to be a track meet. I think it's going to be going up and down, but I think ultimately at the end of the day, this Georgia offense is going to be able to protect Carson Beck. And when he has time, he's playing like a first round draft pick. Now, I know Georgia's going to be hoping that he comes back for another year, but he's playing at an elite level. And I think with the weapons that they have, I think Georgia ends up, it's going to be kind of that coming down to the end of the ball game type deal. And I think Georgia wins late and is able to get a late stop if they need to as well.
Blayne Gilmer of Southeastern 14. Guys, be sure to check out those guys over at Southeastern 14. They do a fantastic job talking all things SEC. Blayne, looking forward to the game on Saturday. This is a blast, my friend. Let's chat again soon, and you guys keep up the good work.
For sure. Thank you for having me, and it's always fun to talk about SEC ball, man, anytime.
Okay, that was our good friend Blayne Gilmer of Southeastern 14. Appreciate him taking the time to chat all things SEC Championship. Dogs and Crimson Tide will do battle 4 o'clock kickoff on Saturday on CBS. And he's got Georgia winning the football game 34-30. Guys, also reminder update, by the way, I'll be dropping a prediction for Saturday's game. That'll probably drop tomorrow. We'll have a prediction for Georgia, Alabama, also prediction for all of the Power 5 championship games this weekend. Guys, that being said, we're not even going to jump into a break. Let's keep it moving here on this Wednesday. Of course, guys, I know that back-to-back combos, back-to-back guests have cut some of our times. We're going to go ahead and get this in and get rolling. It is quarter zip season. We're getting into South Carolina men's basketball really briefly. The Gamecocks with a 65-53 win over the Notre Dame Fighting Irish last night in the SEC ACC Challenge. Colonial Life Arena was rocking as South Carolina gets the W. 6-0, guys. This is the best start for Gamecocks men's basketball since that Final Four season back in 2016, 2017. And I mean, I'll say this, guys. It's early. It's the non-conference. I totally get that. I am not sitting here crowning South Carolina men's basketball as, they're the team to beat in the SEC. They're going to win the SEC championship, or even that they're going to make the NCAA tournament. But you cannot sit here through 6 games and not be encouraged as a fan of South Carolina men's basketball. You just can't, especially after what we witnessed in year 1 of the Lamont Paris era, where, and I talked about this, guys, in the preseason, it really wasn't meant to be a slight or a shot at any particular player or anything that took place last year. But I just really felt like, guys, that the whole G.G. Jackson thing, it was almost like that overshadowed everything else that was happening on the court. Last year was all about developing G.G. Jackson and getting him to the next level. I think this team going out, obviously built through the transfer portal. Lamont Paris did a really, really good job bringing in a number of different pieces, right? Studi, the guard from Vanderbilt, B.J. Mack, the forward from Wofford, Cooper, the guard from Minnesota, did a really, really good job of building in the portal. And I just feel like this team has really benefited playing team basketball versus it's sort of focused on one guy who was a true freshman who wasn't ready to have all of that pressure put on his shoulders. His game was not at the point to take the load and carry that basketball team last year. You look at the game last night, guys, specifically Meechie Johnson goes off in this one, 29 points in 35 minutes. He went 9 of 15 from the field, 4 of 9 from three-point range, 7 of 8 on free throws as well. This team has shot free throws well. That's something that we didn't really see in the Frank Martin era for sure. On a night, too, guys, where South Carolina, I mean, they didn't exactly shoot the lights out. I mean, 38% from the field, 28% from three, but played a suffocating defense. Held Notre Dame to 32% from the field, just 28% from three, and the Irish went 13 to 20, 65% from the charity stripe. We knew that getting Meechie Johnson back this year was big for Lamont Paris's team, and it has been big to this point. Zach Davis off the bench, Jacoby Wright, they've been solid for you. You know, obviously what Josh Gray is giving. But last night, guys, was really all about Meechie Johnson. But this team, guys, it's so much deeper. It's so much better than we saw last year, right? And you can see what Lamont Paris is implementing and what he's building. You can see it taking shape. So, listen, guys, again, I'm not sitting here crowning South Carolina men's basketball. I'm not telling you they're going to go to the NCAA tournament or, you know, this is going to be a repeat of 16 to 17 where you go to the Final Four. But we all agreed, right, in preseason, we all agreed that if South Carolina could just make the NIT this year, that would be considered a really successful season. And, guys, what do you have to do to be in contention for postseason play? What do you have to do to be on the bubble? Well, you got to win in the non-conference. How many times in the previous regime did stupid non-conference losses hurt South Carolina? There's at least one or two more postseason appearances, more than likely, if South Carolina had taken care of their business in the non-conference. And the way it sets up, guys, Gamecocks get George Washington on Friday, a team that beat them last year, a team that's 6-1 coming in that game, but it's just one guy, right? Our friend Jake Crane, let's say, it's only one guy. So you feel good about your odds in that one. Then you've got the rivalry showdown next week. Excuse me, guys, against the Clemson Tigers. You've got the rivalry showdown. Clemson has a game upcoming against Pittsburgh. Guys, there's a chance that both South Carolina and Clemson are 7-0 going into that basketball game. Most highly anticipated rivalry showdown in the hardwood since when? Since when? And I mean, I know these are a pair of fan bases and a pair of schools that are dominated by football. Basketball is very second, right? Very behind, if you will, in that regard. It may not have the same intensity, but you get a pair of 7-0 teams up at Little John Coliseum, could be a lot of fun. Either way, after that, guys, the Gamecocks in non-conference play, it looks very, very favorable in regards to, I mean, guys, them winning out. You got East Carolina after Clemson. That'll be a tough ball game. After that, though, Charleston Southern, Winthrop, Elon, and Florida A&M. That is the back half of December. That is the schedule before SEC play gets going in January. Guys, South Carolina realistically could go undefeated in non-conference play. Undefeated. Which, guys, I don't care if you want to say, oh, these are all cupcakes. You know, there's people that say they're playing nothing but cupcakes, although, you know, I would argue South Carolina's beaten a solid Virginia Tech team, a very solid Grand Canyon team, right? There's been some quality wins, quad one wins, I believe, in there for sure. Some quality wins, no doubt. We all know SEC play is going to tell the story. I totally get that. But for a team that won, 12 games was it last year, I think? 12 games? To already have 6? You already have half of the win total of last year? You got to love what you're seeing thus far as a fan of Gamecocks basketball. And again, you can take care of business on Friday. That George Washington game, I mean, dude, it's going to set up a huge South Carolina-Clemson game around this time next week. So, Gamecocks get that 65-53 win over Notre Dame. It is quarter zip season in Columbia, South Carolina. Lamont Paris has the court cocks rolling through the non-conference slate. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break now. On the other side, guys, we'll talk about some of these transfer portal rumors, The largest of such being KJ Jefferson. Could he end up in Columbia? Should he? Would it be a good take? What would it mean for Lenoris Sellers in the Gamecocks quarterback position? All that and more, guys, on the other side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home. Call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie Ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Wednesday, November the 29th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Lots to get into here with this transfer portal stuff. As I mentioned, guys, top of the show, it's per sources season. It's eyeball emoji season. It's transfer portal season. And South Carolina finds themselves right in the middle of the chatter. Guys, let me first get into this. Again, we'll just call this the transfer portal chatter of the day, right? This is probably going to be a pretty consistent thing. Rumors started to circulate this morning regarding the status of offensive lineman Big Tree Babalade. I'm going to start there because I see some of your comments. I've gotten texts. There's been posts this morning. I reached out to our good friend J.C. Sherbert, who reassured me that there is nothing to worry about when it comes to Big Tree Babalade. That's first off, right? Let's take care of the housekeeping stuff. Big Tree Babalade, South Carolina offensive lineman, even though he scrubbed his Instagram account, there were some reports, is he homesick? Is he going to transfer? And I think there may have been some miscommunication between their people and some people. I have no idea. Either way, J.C. Sherbert and Hale McGranahan have gone on record. Nothing to worry about with Tree Babalade. So again, to answer all the folks in the comments, nothing to worry about there. Now, as the transfer portal madness really gets geared up, this morning it's reported by our good friend Brad Crawford of 24/7 Sports that KJ Jefferson is expected, the Arkansas quarterback, expected to enter the transfer portal. Per Brad Crawford, South Carolina would be one of his top destinations, if not his top destination. The irony of this, guys, is this, that literally yesterday, it was either yesterday or 2 days ago. I think it was yesterday, though. The irony is that yesterday we were talking about the benefits of South Carolina adding another quarterback. And I understand. I get it. There are a lot of folks out there who have gone ahead and just hitched their wagon to Lenora Sellers. They have convinced themselves in their minds because of a throw against Furman when the Gamecocks were up 30 and a late touchdown run against the worst team in the SEC that Lenora Sellers is the next Vince Young. I get it, guys. This is interesting. And certainly now there is debate that's been sparked. Should South Carolina take KJ Jefferson? Should they even want him? I'm seeing some craziness on social media of people saying, well, Sellers will be the quarterback and they'll move KJ to running back or tight end, which is insane, by the way. Insane to think that kid would come to South Carolina or go anywhere else to play anything other than quarterback. Either way, it's still all speculation. KJ Jefferson putting on his Instagram story, I haven't made a decision yet, what have you. So it'll be interesting to see if KJ does stay in Fayetteville with the addition of Bobby Petrino at offensive coordinator, which what an incredible ad that is. But guys, listen to me. The Gamecocks just went 5-7 in year 3 of Shane Beamer. You go into a year 4 in which it is win now. Shane Beamer must win now. Many of you have said it. I would agree. You go 5-7, 4-8 or worse, and things get very, very murky in regards to Shane Beamer and his future. There is nothing wrong with competition. And in the spirit of competition, again, the irony is we talked about this yesterday. In the spirit of competition, why not? Why not add a signal caller to that room who is a veteran, who can bring serious competition? Because I'm sorry, guys, but you got Lenora Sellers right now. Luke Doty is a wide receiver. Colton Gauthier is never going to see the field ever again. Tanner Bailey has gotten lost in the shuffle. He hasn't been good enough to crack the depth chart or make any significant pushes over his career. And Dante Reno is going to be a true freshman, guys. Not expecting a whole lot there either. So, I mean, Is Lenora Sellers really going to be pushed by all of the other parties in that quarterback room? I don't think so, guys. You know, Beamer and company will promote a quarterback battle going into spring no matter what. But, I mean, if that's the room, there is no battle. Lenora Sellers is QB1. But you add KJ Jefferson into the mix. May the best man win. May the best man win. It worked out pretty well for Ole Miss, guys. They had Jackson Dart last year. He was so-so. He was good, but so-so at times. Had some turnover issues. What'd they do? They went out and got Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma State, a guy who was a starter. And then Walker Howard as well, a guy from LSU that has all the potential in the world. They said, may the best man win. Lane Kiffin said, go ahead, battle it out. Jackson Dart ended up winning the job again. And guess what happened? He had his best season of his career. Because iron sharpens iron, guys. Competition brings out the best in people. So I say this. There's no downside to bringing KJ Jefferson in other than if you're on the Lenora Sellers bandwagon and it's going to pain you in your heart of hearts to not see him play. Guys, I don't care who takes the snaps under center. I'll be totally honest with you. I don't give a damn. I've been asked before, right, during the Muschamp era, who do you want to win the quarterback job? I was asked this during year one of Shane Beamer. Who do you want to win the quarterback battle? Guys, I don't care. Play the best man. That's it. I don't care who wins it. So one of two things will happen if KJ Jefferson indeed picks South Carolina. Now, there are other schools involved, Auburn, TCU. This might be a completely moot point, but it's a fun talking point for today at least. If KJ Jefferson chooses South Carolina, one of two things will happen. Either he will come in and he will win the job, or, and you've got a guy who's a veteran in the game, as an SEC quarterback, guy who's thrown for just under 8,000 yards, 67 touchdowns, 18 picks in his career, all SEC caliber player, has rushed for over 1,800 yards and 21 touchdowns in his career. Or guys, Lenora Sellers beats him out, which will only reaffirm, man, this kid's special. This kid is ready. There's no downside to it. There really isn't. So if South Carolina is able to get KJ Jefferson for the right price, right? You're not breaking the bank on NIL. If you can get KJ Jefferson for the right price and he wants to come to Columbia, he wants to play under Dowell Loggins, hey, guys, I mean, can you fault Shane Beamer? We've talked about this ad nauseum in this day and age of college football where it is win now. You got to win now. You don't have 5 years. There's no 4-year development plan for Lenora Sellers. There's no 4-year development plan for anybody. There's no 10-year plan to get the program up and rolling and on track. This isn't Frank Beamer at Virginia Tech. You're not going to get 7 years to reach 8 wins or whatever it was. It's win now. So do you blame Shane Beamer for he looks at 2024 and says, you know what? I could hitch my wagon to an unproven freshman quarterback who we think is supremely talented, or I could bring in a seasoned veteran who's just a more polished version, more than likely, of what Lenora Sellers is. And worst case, our guy Lenoris beats him out, and he proves to all of us that, okay, he's ready. He's ready to go. He's ready to take the reins and be QB1. Worst case, you're leaning on a veteran SEC quarterback that's got all SEC potential and is someone who can manage behind your patchwork offensive line. Show me the downside there. In a win-now world, I wouldn't blame Shane Beamer for taking the QB1 from Arkansas. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, daily mailbag segment. We'll close out the show taking all of your questions, your comments, your voicemails, and more on the other side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home. Call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie, ho, Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Wednesday, November the 29th, 2023. Appreciate you all tuning in, guys. Next 25 minutes or so, we're taking your questions, your comments, Your voicemails here on this Wednesday. I want to hear from you all. Let's see. And of course, I'm not surprised. Our guy, Bruin Nation, is not thrilled about the idea of KJ Jefferson coming to South Carolina. He says this: if you bring him in and just hand him the job and don't legitimately give him a shot, you tell all future quarterback recruits, we'll take you, but we're going to always take a portal guy and put them ahead of them. Bruin Nation, I would say this, and I'm sure you'd agree. Nobody's saying hand KJ the job. I don't think anybody's saying that. I think that what I'm saying certainly is promote competition. There's a quarterback battle undoubtedly. Now, Bruin Nation, let me just say this. Let me say this. If there isn't a quarterback battle and Shane Beamer and Dabble Loggins are saying, you know what? They're telling KJ, same as they told Rattler, you're our guy. Well, then Bruin Nation, that just tells me that they've watched and analyzed KJ Jefferson. They see Lenoris every day, and they're saying to themselves, we know KJ's better right now. We know he's better. Like that's what has to be going on, right? Am I wrong? I mean, I don't agree just hand him the job. I would say if he wants to come to South Carolina, let him battle it out. Let them battle it out. That's what I would say. I certainly don't think you should just hand the job over when you got a guy like Lenoris Sellers, especially. Guys, let's jump into the phone lines. We have a voicemail here. Here we go.
Hey, what's up, Chris? I was calling about KJ Jefferson transferring in. It would be nice to have him. I'd like to see Lenoris Sellers myself get the opportunity, but I think this is just where college football is now, And at a team like South Carolina, the window for Coach Beamer is not going to be wide open anymore. It's slowly closing. And if the same fans that are raising hell saying they want Lenoris Sellers not to bring on KJ Jefferson or Jeffrey, whichever his name is, are the same fans that are going to call for Beamer's job if Lenoris Sellers goes out there and shits the bed. This is just football. This is college football now. It's you got to recruit the best players, and if you don't, you're going to get your ass kicked, especially in the SEC.
Appreciate the voicemail, my friend. Great call. And I mean, I listen, guys, I think he makes a great point. I mean, I think of it this way, though. To his point, I agree. But on one hand, I could say, what is better for if you're Beamer, right? Like, would Beamer receive more grace from the fan base? Let's say Carolina, let's say they go 5-7. Let's say they go 6-6 next year, whatever it is. It's another stressful, struggling type of season, right? But Lenoris Sellers shines. Would folks look on the season more favorably and the future more favorably versus if KJ Jefferson comes in and you go 6-6? You know what I mean? Like, because I mean, dude, you had Rattler this year and went 5-7. So Ruination says, I've known the Sellers family for years. You just saw him against Furman. We've never had this type of quarterback at South Carolina. He may fail. Nothing's guaranteed, but you don't waste his talent without a real shot. Again, I say let him battle it out. Big Wash. We don't need a one-off. We need somebody who's going to be here 2 to 3 years. Big Wash, I hear what you're saying, but that's just not college football anymore, man. It's free agency. It's a free agent market. I mean, Big Wash, you see it, right? Hell, Grayson McCall just entered the portal. Like, it is, if you can go out there and snag a quarterback, you do it. That is the way of the world in college football now. There is no, like, we need to – I mean, how many guys are – there are very few 3 or 4 year starters left. Like, there's a lot of schools that are starting portal quarterbacks. Not all of them, but a lot of them. I think it's really cool, guys. When you look at the SEC championship, Georgia and Alabama, both of these guys, you can call it, are homegrown guys. Jalen Milroe and Carson Beck waited their terms at their respective school. I think that's much more likely to happen at a school that's competing for national championships because it's like, well, where are you going to go where the grass is greener? I mean, unless you're the third or fourth string guy, where are you going to go, right? Especially if there's real promise that you will see the field at some point. I mean, again, I see what Big Wash is saying. Yeah, I see it, but we don't need a quarterback. We have a young team. Let the guys come together. Well, Big Wash, again, you can say that. Sure, hey, let all these young guys build together. But when those young guys take their lumps and go 5-7 next year, Big Wash, you or nobody else is going to give a damn. We're going to be talking about Shane Beamer's job status. So, I mean, there's a balance there. There's a balance there. And I hear you people saying, like, what about the high school kids? Guys, high school recruiting is literally, I think at this point, secondary to the portal. Those 10 guys or so you pick up in the portal, 10 to 15, however many it is, I would say they're more important than the high school kids. Really, truly. And that's tough for the high school guys. I mean, there's never been a worse time to be a 3-star athlete than right now. Because if I'm a head coach and I can go out and get a guy who's got college experience, got Power 5 experience especially, and it's him or the 3-star high school kid, I'm going with the portal guy. I'm going with the guy that has played college football before and has been successful. Like, it's not even a debate, guys. It's not even a debate. I know many folks don't like that, but I mean, Cade Sutter says, bring a quarterback in that went 4-8 this year. Cade, to your point, that would be like Spencer Rattler entering the portal and him saying, I want to go to Arkansas. And an Arkansas fan going, bringing a quarterback that went 5-7. Cade, I'm sure your reaction to that would be, what do you mean? Spencer Rattler's great. I mean, KJ Jefferson was far from perfect, guys, but there were many. Look, it was damn near the same. They couldn't block. They couldn't block for him. So, I mean, Cade, it'd be kind of like that where you and I both know the record doesn't reflect the value of Rattler. I think it's the same way. With KJ Jefferson. Again, this may not even happen, by the way. Nothing's official. He's then got to pick South Carolina. But, guys, let me ask you this. I mean, what does it tell you? This is all per sources, of course, but, I mean, I trust our friend Brad Crawford. I trust others in the industry as well. What does it tell you that South Carolina even has the interest level to where KJ Jefferson, it's thought of as South Carolina is his leader? Like, what does that tell you? You know what I mean? What does that tell you? Like, they've already expressed interest per sources. I mean, listen, I know I know people are high on Lenora Sellers, man. I know that. I get that. I think he's going to be a good one too, but I mean, there's nothing that says he's going to be better than KJ Jefferson as an SEC quarterback. It's just nothing. I mean, there's one throw against Furman and there's a run against Vanderbilt. But I mean, and I'm not trying to downplay what he can be. I'm just saying that, like, maybe the coaching staff is looking at it that way also. I don't know, guys. I'll put it to you this way. After you go 5-7, you don't turn down anybody who can help your football team. You don't turn down real SEC talent after you go 5-7. You just don't do it. You don't do it. So if a guy like KJ Jefferson says, you know what, my boy Trey Knox told me it was really fun, and Dowell Loggins is there, Justin Stepp is there, like I want to go to South Carolina. Do you tell KJ Jefferson no? Do you tell him no? Guys, and if you say yes, if you say that you tell him no, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can get on board with that. Again, you say, all right, come in. We're not going to promise you the job, but come on in. And I don't disagree, by the way, Big Wash. If it's about getting KJ Jefferson or a real position of need, then, I mean, I would agree with you. You obviously don't bring him in for the wrong price, but if it's the right price, then Brian Dean says, I have vested interest in the AAC title game because I'm old enough to remember the Pony Express. And now with SMU in the ACC, I hope to see Clemson get beat twice a year now. Number 1, Carolina. Number 2, SMU. Bruin Nation talking about, I think, questioning me. Do we know they're going to promote competition? This staff has shown time after time again they don't always play the better talent. Bruin Nation, can I just ask you a question in response to your question? Isn't it a scary thought to think that we are through 3 years at Columbia and you, and I would imagine others, don't even trust that the head coach and the OC is going to play the best player? Is that not a problem? Like, forget the KJ Jefferson thing. Is that not a problem, Bruin Nation? Would you not agree with that? I feel like that's a problem. I just, like, when you, it reminds me a lot of the Muschamp era. I hate to say it. You can throw stones if you want, but, like, that was the point we got at the end of the Muschamp era where folks no longer trusted the head coach. They no longer trusted his decision-making. I mean, if KJ Jefferson comes to Carolina, this feels like Colin Hill and Ryan Helinski all over again. This feels like that where people feel like one guy should be playing over the other, and it's like there's no trust between the fan base and the coaching staff, and, like, that's not a good spot to be in. So this goes beyond the KJ thing. It's really saying something if the fan base no longer believes the coaching staff is going to play the best players. That is wild. And I'm not saying you're unfounded in that, Ruben Nation. I'm not saying you're wrong because Frank points it out. We've pointed it out. I mean, why was DeCarrion Joyner ever playing over Mario Anderson? Why? How did that happen? So, you know, why is Luke Doty playing over other receivers? I mean, you know, and I mean, I know the Doty family didn't appreciate me bringing his name up, but hey, tough, man. The SEC. And I'm just asking questions that everybody else is thinking. So it's not a good spot to be in when your fan base is questioning, hey, is our coaching staff going to put the best players out there? Like, when you have your fan base questioning, do you make personnel decisions off of talent or do you make them off of loyalty to veterans? That's a problem. That's a problem. So I'm hoping that doesn't continue because that's a surefire way to lose folks. No doubt. It's a surefire way to lose folks. Ethan K says this coaching staff can't have another risky year. Obviously, whoever's back there at quarterback, we need a better O-line and weapons or it won't matter. 110%, absolutely. Yes, Brian Dean, Seller's brother, is committed to South Carolina. God. Bruin Nation and John Emperor. That is the best rivalry in TDC history for sure. Let's see. Peyton Smith. This is more than just a prove-it year for Beamer. It's a prove-it year for his recruiting classes as well. These guys need to prove themselves. Ethan K. The portal is more important than high school recruiting now. That's the reality. Guys stay longer, so they are more proven. Yeah, I mean, I certainly think the portal is more important. I mean, high school recruiting is still important. Don't get me wrong, but the portal's how you win now. Cameron Blassingame, we did an absolute game breaker at running back, and Trayshawn Ward from K-State should be on the priority list. Get KJ for the right price and get 3 O-linemen. Big Wash. I know where you guys get that theory, but positions in football are given mostly due to results in live scrimmages and practice because there's no preseason in college. I mean, Big Wash, I'm someone I don't want to believe. I don't want to believe that the coaching staff plays players off of favorites. I mean, these guys are doing it for a living, right? They know the business of college football. They are literally doing it for a living. I never bought into it. Like, of all the things I didn't like about Muschamp, that was one thing I never bought into, was that they're just playing a guy because they dislike this one but like this one. That's hard for me to wrap my brain around, truly. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around that guys play favorites. It really is. Cade, what record do we need to reach next year to keep Beamer off the hot seat? To keep Beamer off the hot seat going in 2025, I think if you go 7-5 or better, Cade, with Lenoris, I'm just going to assume, until the KJ stuff's official, I'm going to assume Lenoris Sellers is your quarterback. If you go 7-5, Lenoris Sellers at quarterback, then I think the approval rating is close to 100% as it can get. You're always going to have some outliers no matter what. I think the approval rating is as high as it can be. I think folks are really excited about the future. I think folks are looking at 2025 as the pop-off year. Bottom line, guys, is this. What we're building towards, in my opinion, I think Shane Beamer is going to get 2025 no matter what. Now, you go 3-9 next year or something, within reason. I think Shane Beamer is going to get 2025 no matter what. I think that will be the year that folks look at and say, okay, year 5 is what we got. So if it's not at minimum 8-4 in year 5, and y'all can give me your feedback on this, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but like, if it's not at minimum 8-4, I think there will be a real large portion of the fan base that will start calling for heads to roll. That head being Shane Beamer's. And I know that's hard to fathom. Heck, it's hard to fathom for me, guys, because I mean, I was surprised after the Tennessee game this year when people were realistically calling, saying, you know what, maybe Beamer's not the guy. Then the Florida game happened. Then the season unfolded. And I mean, it was like, man, like this season truly goes to show that nobody's immune from the results of losing. Nobody's immune from that. So, I think next year 7-5 or better is needed. I think absolutely. If you go 7-5 or better with that schedule, with Lenoris Sellers at QB, I think you say to yourself, okay, we see the potential here. I think 2025 is when it's got to click, man. I'm not saying make a 12-team playoff. I'm not saying that. 7-5. 7-5, maybe in year 5, you're bringing him back. 6-6 or worse. I don't know. I really don't know. I have no idea. 8-4 or better, I think South Carolina would be crazy to move on. 8-4 or better, I think they'd be crazy to move on. I think you bring Beamer back for 2026 and you go from there. So, yeah. So, Cade says, if we don't go bowling next year, it'll get dicey. No doubt, Cade. I mean, listen, no doubt. I mean, I guess here's my dilemma, Cade. Here's my dilemma. And again, some folks won't like hearing this, but this is the real dilemma. 5-7 or worse next year should get Beamer fired. It should. If you want my honest opinion, it should. At a program that has high expectations, it should. It should. But at a place like South Carolina, where you feel like you have to be more patient, I don't think it will. And again, I don't say that it should from the standpoint I'm going to call for Beamer's job. Guys, again, I've been the fire the coach guy. I mean, if I feel like something needs to be done, I'm going to say it, but like it's exhausting. I'm probably not going to do that until it becomes blatantly obvious that a change is needed, okay? But I'm just saying, if Billy Napier goes 5-7 in year 3 at Florida, he's getting the axe, right? You're not getting forever to turn programs around. And I understand that it's not necessarily like the rule, like, man, the portal's made it where you better be winning in 2 years. You better be winning in 3. But, like, we're seeing it. I mean, guys, Josh Heupel flipped the switch in Knoxville overnight. Brian Kelly got LSU And I know LSU is not a great example, but like Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss has made Ole Miss a 10-win program. Like, so I'm not telling you South Carolina should have won 10 games this year. That's not what I'm saying. But the transfer portal has undoubtedly sped things up. Undoubtedly sped things up. And Brian Dean, let me please address this. I read on Twitter where White was going to be let go and Beamer was going to bring Lorenzo Ward from Chattanooga. I'm sure, Brian Dean, then you know that was obviously a troll job and was not legitimate. So, no. Here we go. Hawkin BS says if 5-7 doesn't get a coach fired in 4 years, South Carolina's not serious about football. John is laughing, I think, because he knows who posted it and he knows that it's nonsense. Because I saw that too, and I was like, this is absurd. Let's see. Carolina Security Pros. The bigger question is when are we replacing Luke Day and some other coaches? Carolina Security Pros, I have no idea, my friend. I have no clue. I don't know. I don't know that folks are going to get their immediate, I don't know if folks are going to get their immediate desires fulfilled, if you will, in regards to that. Brian Dean, do I think that Clayton White needs to go? Again, after the way you finish the season, I think this is one of those things where Shane Beamer's got a decision to make. I personally, guys, would make the move. I would. Even factoring in the end of the season, there's 2.5, we'll call it, years of evidence of pointing to the defense not being great, not being very good, having to lean on turnovers to bail them out. Guys, even just look at this year. Like, if we're just basing the season off of the last 2 games, well, then the season was a success for the defense. But, I mean, there were 10 other games. You want to factor in Vandy? Fine. There were 9 other games, guys. This same defense got exposed by Jacksonville State. So, yeah, I think it would be in Beamer's best interest to make the move. I'd make the move, but after the way they finished and, if Beamer says, you know what, we made some scheme changes together, we need Clayton White back, he's an asset to our program, you just trust him. You have to. You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. Coach Ford says, I'll be shocked if there are any staff changes. Beamer said these are his guys. He should stand with them, especially low gains. All right. Cool. Carolina Security Pros, I think we go 6-6 next, which shows improvement and will save Beamer's jump. Yeah, I mean, Carolina Security Pros, again, I think 6-6 are better. Beamer's back in 2025, no question. I mean, heck, guys, I think even if you go 5-7, if it's with Lenora Sellers, and I think you say, you know what, give him one more year, let this thing build. I tell you though, man, if you miss bowl games back to back, that's tough. I mean, that's real. It's just really, really tough to overcome in this day and age in the SEC, man. It is. It really is. Especially, guys, when you look at next year's schedule, and I mean, you guys may not be huge fans of Mark Ryan, but he's made this point. I would make this point. Like, there are 4 built-in wins on that schedule next year. Old Dominion, Wofford, who's the other one? Akron or something, maybe? I don't know. There's 3 non-conference games and Vanderbilt. I mean, guys, if you can't get to 6 wins next year, I know the schedule's a gauntlet. I totally get it. But, I mean, the schedule is what the schedule is every single year. If you can't get to 6 wins next year, going to be some interesting conversations taking place. Guys, we have hit 2 o'clock. Hey, appreciate you all tuning in, man. The beauty's truly in the banter. Great stuff as always here on this Wednesday, guys. Be sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon so you get notifications when we go live. We drop new video content as well. Also, guys, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to us there. Rate the show as well. We appreciate the ratings and the reviews. We're at the Spurs Up Show there. And again, be sure you're following us on social media at the Spurs Up Show. One last question, and we'll get out of here. John Rice says, do we really want KJ over Sellers, though? I'd almost rather let Sellers run with it, even if there's growing pains. Not a bad open of the year next year with ODU. I mean, John, you make a good point. You make a good point. Maybe there's more value to letting Sellers get his feet wet. And, I think there's value, too, of letting Sellers go through the offseason and know he's QB1 and prepare accordingly. Again, John, that's a decision that you have to trust Dabble Loggins and Shane Beamer to make. That's a decision you have to trust them to make. And it'll be interesting, no doubt, to see what that decision is. Guys, that being said, thank you all so much for the banter, the comments. The beauty is truly in the banter, and I appreciate each and every single one of you engaging throughout. Thank you all so much, guys. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.